Hello, today we will give a presentation about culture. Shuangjie, Shengping, and me will give this presentation from three different perspectives. Now I will share my screen about today's topic. Now, we can see that there are three parts in our presentation. The first part is given by Shuangjie, and she will talk about the concept of culture. The second part is given from Shengping. He will talk about the cultural capital and the transformation. And then finally, the third part, I will talk about the cross-cultural design. So let's start from Shuangjie.
Hello everyone, my name is Shuangjie and now I will share my screen about the concept of culture. In a culture given by Goldsmith's Panoply 2020 years, the culture asks a question: what's the concept of culture? What comes to mind when you think of the word culture? Maybe some people think of jazz bands, some people think of the great waiters of the world, some people might think of pictures or economic book culture and so on. So, generally speaking, culture including literary nouns, music, pictures, dances, comics, and other forms of expression. But in reality, the word culture is much more complicated than that. In terms of different time periods, the concept of culture changes over time. In the 18th century, culture has class connections tended toward education. The rich in this period don't need to work for living. They spend more time on education. At the turn of the 19th century, there were two different ideas about the concept of culture. Some people believe that culture is a whole way of life, while others people that culture is the high point of people. People who think culture is a whole way of life, they like to collect stories and study people's way of life. Culture is the bright side of life. However, those who believe that culture is the high point of the people, they feel that the best cultural products can improve life and contribute to the intellectual, spiritual, and moral development. They believe that culture too is the great product of art. In this lecture, there are examples of both views. But personally, I prefer the fact that culture is the whole way of people's life, which is no doubt about it. Nowadays, culture can be divided into mass culture and high culture in people's life. Mass culture, such as literary novels, TV series, pop songs, comics, and pictures, can be seen everywhere. High culture, such as musicals in the theater, ballets, paintings in art galleries, and so on. Whether it's mass culture or high culture, it's full of people's daily life. This shows culture as a whole way of life, which is closely related to people's life. To sum up, I prefer culture is a whole way of life for people. That's my topic. Now it's Shengping turn.
Hello, I'm Shengping. This is my presentation, and now I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to talk about three parts: bourgeois, cultural transmission, and cultural output. For the first part, bourgeois, we know it's one of the most influential social scientists in this century, and he just divide the capital into four parts. The first is economic capital, then cultural capital, then social capital, and actually there's one more things, symbolic capital. And now I'm going to talk about cultural capital. Just like the text said, it's not easy to itemize and make a tally of cultural capital. Yeah, we can easily count an individual's year of education, but formal education is only one part of what comprises capital. Yeah, so um, we know culture comes from everywhere, and there are some storage methods that Berger once said. The first one is embodied cultural capital, and then objectified cultural capital, and then institutionalized cultural capital. For the first one, embodied cultural capital, just like the word embodied, it comes from our mind, our brain. Yeah, we gain knowledge from outside, maybe from our parents, from our friends, our teachers, and even the cultural environment. And for example, I'm from China, so I'm surrounded and influenced by Chinese cultural environment. And for the objectified cultural capital, I think it's more like a container that collect kinds of culture, like we use book, record, or painting. Yeah. And then institutionalized cultural capital is about honor or certificate. Maybe some people have their master's degree certificate, ACCA certificate, or CPA certificate. Yeah. And there are two, I think, significant points. And the first is that specific cultural capital is a we call prerequisite for specific aesthetic activities and maybe entertainment activities. For example, if this person are good at English or Chinese, maybe he will prefer to watch movies or TV plays with English or Chinese than the movies or TV plays with Korean or Japanese. And the second point is that cultural capital is a symbol of class division. I think is really important at that time. And for the conclusion, I think people's taste has been shaped by their own class. And the reason why different aesthetic preferences are good and bad may be due to the result of social construction and created by the people who occupy the right to speak that we called upper class. Yeah, and we know they always control everything at that time. And for my thoughts, I think nowadays the concept of class has gradually faded, and the relationship between culture and class is no longer so obvious, especially for my country, I think. And people could receive different culture more equally than before. And yeah, there are still many inequalities, but I think the situation better than before. And culture has become more diverse. We know there are a lot of forms of cultural transmission, like education and especially social media. It's a really good way to transmit culture. And I think the image is also a good form of culture transmission. Just like we can observe these images, maybe advertisements or posters that we can find the denotation and the connotation, the myths that we learned from our image class. Yeah, I really like our image class. And I think the meaning behind it maybe they want to promote their brand culture or show an era or show some different styles. Yeah. And on the way of cultural communication, I think cultural output also appeared. I just gave my example about Japan. I think it's animation, comics, or games that we called cultural industry is really good. Just like when we see this character, I think all of us know it. Could you please tell me what it's called?
Yes, it's Mario.
Yeah, yeah, it's Mario from a game, and I think it was created in maybe 1981. And then the One Piece, the comic, is really also famous. And then yeah, it's Nintendo which created this character, and this is the newest product from this famous game company. And I think it's not a simple commercial output. They just created this character, the comic or games, and they're not just for making more money. I think it's more like a promotional. Um, they just take them to the world as the most attractive way. So, in my opinion, when people see something, they can recognize it for the first time and know what the name is and where it comes from. And that shows, I think, they know it really well. And I think that's a really successful cultural transmission and output. Just like some of my friends, they will go to learn Japanese. It's not that they like. The reason is that there are so many games delivered just with Japanese. When they are good at Japanese, they will be more immersed in the game, and later some of them start to fall in love with this country. Yeah, and now I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry, I talk about too much, and that's all my thoughts. Now it's Shane's turn.
Hi, I'm Xuanyi, and I will give the presentation from the perspective of the cross-culture. Now I will share my screen. I will start from the background. The background is about the globalization. The development of the globalization promotes the mobility of pollution and culture. So multicultural communities have emerged. For example, we came to London to study. This behavior is also kind of thing that participate in a development process of a multicultural community. However, cultural diversity determines the existence of cultural differences so that there are barriers of communication and understanding in people's lives. Existing products or services for a single culture cannot meet the needs of people well in such communities. In this case, what kind of design can better meet the needs of people in the multicultural background? How can people from different cultural backgrounds communicate and understand each other better? This culture need promotes the emergence of cross-cultural design. And then we will start from this example. The example is about a Happy New Year greeting card here. The Y of the New Year is replaced by the Chinese character Yang, which means ship in Chinese, because it is the year of the ship in the Chinese lunar calendar. So the card is designed to meet the need to convey New Year greeting and also provoke the cultural resonance of the festival and the traditions of people from both China and Britain. British. And here's the definition from Erin Morrow. She said, cross-cultural design is the creation of products, services, communications, and experience that facilitates interactions between cultures or across communication boundaries, which means that cross-culture is a kind of design that a cross-cultural design is a kind of design which can be used by people from different cultures together or break communication barriers, promote understanding between each other, and arouse kind of cultural resonance. For example, here, the data visualization chart is a very effective tool to promote cross-cultural communication. People don't need to rely on the text to understand the data's meaning. The numbers can be shown through visual language, and which is easier to understand, build a bridge of cross-cultural communication. And Here's my thoughts about the cross-cultural design. I think that cross-cultural design has been common and necessary in daily life. It can not only meet the communication needs at the present stage, but also can promote the promotion of new cultures. The culture always develops through the creation. Like this example, the emoji is a kind of cross-cultural design. At first, it's a tool through which people can express and communicate emotions without language. But with its broad application in the world, it has become a unique culture of symbol and even become a common language. Lot of works are from used by the user emojis to present their thoughts, and it become a kind of phenomenon. So in conclusion, with the development of globalization, more and more new cultures will be emerged and developed in the needs of cross-cultural communication. This will be a very interesting trend. So here's that's the presentation we given today. And in this presentation, we talk about the culture in three parts. The part one is given by the Shuangjie, and she thinks that culture is a way of life and which is close related to people's life. And in part two, Shengping said that the relationship between culture and class is no longer too close and diversified in different forms. Then I talk about the cross-cultural design. It's a way to reduce barriers to communication and improve the cultural understanding. And what's more, it may promote the creation of new cultures. In today's presentation, we think we developed and shown these two key learning outcome. The first one is the critical thinking, which means summarizing, evaluating, and using theories. And another one is applying theories to examples. Here are the reference we used and it really helped. Now I will start sharing my screen. Yeah, this is the presentation we're giving today, and thank you for watching this video. We are very pleasure to share our ideas with you, and hope we can have a nice discussion in the future. Thank you.